Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Quick Tie. My name is Tim Hepworth here with Fly Fishing Bover Outfitters and Thursday Night Live Fly Tying. I want to thank Western Canada Fly Fishing Guide School for bringing you this quick tie tonight. We are tying an awesome little fly up here. We are tying the Last Chance Purple Haze. You can see it just below me there. As it's been said, this is not a fly for Instagram. It's kind of funky looking, kind of ugly, but it's a sweet little fly. Excited to show you how to do it. I'm tying out of my Season 6 kit tonight. Looks like this. Take out your episode 11, that's where this is coming from. If you aren't tying out of the Season 6 kit, go ahead and grab your individual kit if you've purchased one and follow along. And if not, don't worry, head over to our website and we have a full fly recipe so you'll be able to grab your own material and still follow along with this pattern. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this video, it helps us a lot. Drop a comment, we love to know if you're part of the replay squad, and if you are watching, then just leave a comment so I know you were there. Okay guys, well, let's get into this pattern. Head over to the vise and take a peek. This is what we got. So I know the CDC is actually kind of hard to see, so I'll do this a couple times for you tonight so you can see it a little better. No real shirt color, shows all the colors in this fly because there's quite a few of them very well. So we've got...
Oh wait, skin color.
Oh, skin? Oh, I wish I was brave enough to tie with my shirt off the whole time, but I'm just not gonna do it because my chest hair would just blend and it wouldn't look good. Anyways, this is a cripple. Now what is a cripple? Well, this is meant to look like a mayfly who is stuck trying to emerge on the surface, and it's kind of stuck in its little shuck or its shell and it can't get out. That's what a cripple looks like. If you look at the water a lot, you're gonna notice and see some of these bugs that just seem to struggle and never get off the water, so it's easy food for trout, and that's why we tie some. This will actually be, I think, the first time we tie a cripple on TNL, so I'm excited to show you this one. So let's go ahead, we'll get this hook out of the vise, and we'll get our hook, next hook in the vise. Now this is a little bit of a challenge for you guys tonight because this is a little bit of a complicated pattern, but it's also a small hook. So this is a size 14, not super small, but when it comes to tying a little bit more complicated dry, it's gonna feel maybe a little more difficult. I am tying with some UTC 70 in purple just to match the fly, but anything dark or even white is gonna be fine. You're not really gonna see your thread wraps all that much. So let's go ahead, let's get our thread started just behind the hook eye. Can work it back a little ways. We can come in here and trim out our tag end. Now we got quite a few materials we're gonna tie in here tonight. The first one is gonna be some moose body hair. Okay, so you got some of this in your kit. Now you're gonna wanna grab somewhere in that like 6 to 8 hairs. Now I know that's a really hard thing to judge, so just grab a pinch of them. If you've got too many after you stack it, then you can always take some out. But grab enough that it looks like that'd be a sufficient tail. That's probably a little too many, somewhere in kind of that mark there. So I'm gonna pull those out of the pack. Now go ahead and grab your hair stacker. We'll slide those in tips first. And we're gonna give that a couple wraps on the table and pull it so that the base is facing down your vise, down the hook. You can pull out your tips there. Now you might have some, like I did there, you might just have a hair that's a little bit out of whack with the rest of them. Just go ahead and get rid of that one. So we don't need a super over pronounced tail on this fly, but we do want some of these little bit bigger dark fibers, which is why that moose body hair is a good choice. It's a little stiffer as well. So we're gonna measure roughly a hook shank in length out the back. So you can see I've got it pinched in my fingers. I lay my fingers on the hook eye, I lean it down, and I get my measurement. That's roughly good. I'm gonna transfer that back so that, don't worry about where my thread is, worry about where my fingers are. So when I transfer that back, I want my fingers to be at the hook bend, showing the full length of the tail at the back. Now I need to switch hands, keeping that same position, and I can go to my bobbin, and we're gonna start off with some loose wraps. The thing with this material is if I pull down too hard and too tight of wraps, it's actually really gonna flare that hair, which is not what we want. I'm also lifting up on it so that I can make sure that I keep it right on top of the hook shank, okay? So I'm gonna take this all the way back till my thread hangs at the barb or slightly behind. We just don't wanna wrap so far that it goes over the hook bend and then all of those hair fibers wanna tip down and around the bend. That's not what we want. But you notice I never really pulled hard. I just put tight wraps, but I'm not cinching down. So I'm gonna come up here and snip this out. And you can see by where I started my thread and where I left it, I've left about 1/3 of that hook shank free, because that is where our hackle is gonna go at the end. So you can think of the portion we've created here is the whole body. That's where the dubbing's gonna go, that's where some of these other materials are gonna go, and we're gonna finish that last space by putting our hackle in up front. Okay, so the next material is we have some Antron yarn. Okay, we got it in this kind of golden brown, yellow. What I want you to do is cut off a piece that's about 1 inch long. Now this is gonna be enough to make you a couple flies out of this piece because I want you to go in here and split it in half. Maybe even a little under half. Set that chunk aside. We're left with something like this. That's still a little bit much. We just want this to be a bit of a faint color. This is gonna help kind of simulate some of that shuck or that shell that is trying to shed. And now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna bring my thread back up to where I started the hair tying in, and I'm just gonna lay this back, leaving some extra length because I will trim it up here in a second. Switch hands, again, get that gathering wrap right up on top, pinch it on, and then I can lift it up just like I did with that moose hair, take it right back to the same spot. Now what I'm gonna do from here is I'm gonna keep lifting up on this. I'm gonna make sure I can see that tail if it's snuck down into the vise a little bit. I wanna cut this about halfway back down the tail. And it's gonna look like a little puff there. We're gonna leave that right there. So that our tail and our puff are sitting right on top of that yarn. And then I'm gonna come up here and I'm gonna trim this out right at the top as well. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna put in here is our purple dubbing. So we've got some nice fine dry fly dubbing. You got about enough here to tie 1,000 of these. Grab yourself just a little wisp. We really do not need to use much on this fly. That's probably like significantly too much. We're basically coloring our thread right at the start of our dubbing noodle, okay? We've done lots of these dubbing noodles, so remember, twist your fingers in one direction on that thread, and it's gonna allow us to create that dubbing noodle in the right direction. So the very first piece I put in is gonna be very wispy, I like to say, very, very thin. We're gonna make sure it's good and tight on our thread, like so. And as I come down a little bit, I can put a little bit more on because I'm gonna be building that taper of the body size increasing. And you only need it to be maybe 1.5 inches long. You can always add a little bit more after if you need to. And I wanna make sure that that dubbing starts right at the back here, just making sure that we keep all those other materials aligned and not pinching them down. We'll start that right there and start advancing forward, touching wraps. Tighten up that dubbing again. As we get closer up here, we're building a little bit extra bulk. Add a little bit there. And then advance my thread to just in front of that body. So that's gonna be the body of the fly. Pretty much does the whole body as is, and then everything else is just gonna be added to the front here. So if you noticed on this guy here, you can tell we have some CDC, that's that white material in there, okay? This is what we're gonna tie in next. So you're gonna have a few CDC feathers in there. Looks something like this. So this is not a CDC puff, this is actually a CDC feather. And this comes from a duck's butthole. It sheds water well, it's good for dry flies, just doesn't come from a very nice part of the body is all. I'm gonna place so the stem of it is back down the back of the fly. I'm gonna kind of twist it together. Now I'm gonna leave that little puff out the front, and I want it to be in length, I want it to be about half of the hook shank in length. So if that's the full hook shank in length, by measuring it off the back, I wanna shorten that up to about half of that. About half out the front. And I'm gonna start by wrapping it just behind the eye. So get a good gathering wrap on it, really trying to keep that right up on top of the hook shank. I'm gonna lift up, take this all the way back against the body. From here, as long as I got my length right in the front, I'm gonna come and trim the CDC. We are also leaving some of the CDC on. So I'm gonna basically go, if I measured the body out roughly, I want it to be 2/3 of the body's length. So I can lay it on my scissors, basically measure that, and trim it. Okay, so we got a little white tuft on the back, and a little bit bigger one out the front. Now from here, I'm gonna take my thread forward. I wanna make sure that I get this right down to the eye, but again, making sure that I can keep that CDC right up on top of the hook shank. And once I've got that in and secure, take and readjust my hook a bit here. There we go. Now we're on to our hackle. This is probably the more challenging portion of this fly because we're gonna tie in 2 different hackle. We're gonna tie in a brown, oh, I dropped my grizzly. So we're gonna tie in these 2 right here. Okay, so we got a brown one and we got a grizzly. We're gonna tie in the brown one first. So I'm gonna come down to the very base of the stem. I'm gonna peel off some of those fibers to expose a little bit of the stem. Now I'm gonna tie this in so that the underside of the feather is pointed back down the fly, and we might be having some technical errors here. Okay guys, so we're just gonna grab this, this brown hackle first, okay? We've exposed a little bit of the stem. Now we're gonna tie this in with the underside of the feather. So we have our top side and our bottom side. The dull side is the underside. It's also a little bit concave, and it looks duller, so you can kind of tell. We want that to be pointed back rear down the fly. I'm gonna tie this in just behind where that back CDC puff is. We have a few thread wraps to get that secured. I'm gonna leave that stem right there for a moment because I'm gonna tie in my other one. I'm gonna come and grab my grizzly colored hackle, so this is in white and black. I'm gonna again peel a few fibers off the bottom, exposing some of that stem. Again, underside of the feather is gonna be pointed rearward back down the fly. I'm gonna come in here and tie it in right next to the other one. Right there. Take some thread wraps back up so they line up together, and then a couple more thread wraps forward. And then I need to come in here and trim out those stems. And then I want to advance my thread all the way forward. Come on, cut for me. Advance my thread all the way forward to right by that CDC puff. This would be a great time to throw in a little half hitch. As always, it just saves our work for us. Try not to trap anything in there. I got just a little bit of that back CDC in there, but that's okay. I'm gonna set my bobbin aside, just makes it a little easier for working this hackle forward. Now I'm gonna grab my brown hackle first. Now remember, if we're gonna put in two hackles, we don't wanna just really stack the wraps on top of each other. We need to leave some space for that second one that's coming. So I'm gonna rotate my vise, leaving a little bit of space in between, all the way forward, till I get right up close to the eye. I'm gonna bring my thread back. I'm gonna secure this so it can't go anywhere. Couple of wraps, make sure it's good and tight before I cut this hackle out. It's always a bummer if you cut it out too soon and then you end up losing your progress and you gotta start over. Be careful when you go in and cut this out that you're not cutting out too many other of those hackle fibers. It's where some really good scissors really shows some good work. You can set that aside, and now we're gonna come and grab our grizzly hackle. This time I'm gonna do it by hand just because I'm not gonna put a half hitch in because I want this thread right ready to go. And the goal is to try to fit in between the other wraps of hackle, getting this grizzly hackle in there. And then once I get all the way to here, lift that hackle up straight. You could use hackle pliers here too. These feathers are long enough I can keep my grip on them, but if they weren't, it would definitely be advantageous to use some hackle pliers. We're gonna secure. Try not to trap too many fibers in there. Make sure you get a couple thread wraps behind and in front. And now what I wanna do before I move on is I wanna grab all of this material and pull it back. It's CDC included, and I wanna get some thread wraps just in front of the CDC. That's gonna help prop it up a little bit. 2 or 3 wraps. It's gonna be up like so. And then I'm gonna come in here, instead of whip finishing, I'm gonna use my half hitch tool. So a couple of wraps around there, put it over the eye, pushes that material back out of the way, and slide my knot down. I'm gonna go one more time. And then what I'm gonna be able to do is go ahead and trim out my thread, and also trim out that grizzly hackle. Set that bobbin aside. It's always good to take your time, make sure you're trimming what you should. I got a few fibers stuck up here with my CDC, so I'm gonna try to get those out as well. Like we said earlier, this isn't a fly made for Instagram. It's kind of an ugly fly, but it definitely works. It's a great cripple pattern. Make sure you got everything lined up where you want it to be. Got a few more that are just driving me a little crazy. There we go. Okay, now this isn't a bad thing to put some resin on. If you got some Sally Hansen's or something, it's gonna soak in there really well. I'm gonna give you, again, another look so you can see where those puffs are sitting in this pattern. Great cripple pattern. This is the Last Chance Purple Haze. I hope you can give it a try and see what you think on your home waters, but I'm pretty positive it's gonna do some good things for you. Okay guys, that has been another quick tie of the Last Chance Purple Haze. Again, my name is Tim Hepworth with Fly Fishing Warrior Outfitters and Thursday Night Live Fly Tying. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this video, and I'll let you know next week when we have a couple more flies coming your way. Until then, have a great week, and we'll see you then.